I want to start with the Dr. Pepper chocolate milk question. Is that something you would entertain? Would you try that like Coach Knight used to drink, or are you going to stay away like Tommy and Big C?
You know what? I would try it because, listen, if it worked for Bobby Knight all those years, it can't be that bad, right?
I know.
So, yeah.
That was my thought. Maybe he was on to something. So we played the clip of former Alabama defensive back Roman Harper talking about Arkansas' schedule. Pat, you've looked at SEC schedules. Does Arkansas not only have the toughest in the SEC, but is it the toughest in college football with having to go to Memphis, Notre Dame at home, and everything else you got to do next year?
Yeah, and listen, I just hope that if Arkansas can navigate it, I hope that whatever rendition of the College Football Playoff Committee we get, maybe that they'll give Arkansas credit for playing a tough schedule because obviously everybody else that's in the College Football Playoff, you can play the Patsies of the world and have the worst conference in America and get buys in the College Football Playoff. So, yeah, it's tough. It's brutal. And so I guarantee you that Sam Pittman won't get up there and run his mouth like Kirby Smart did at the SEC Championship game about how difficult the schedule is. But, yeah, when it came out last night and you start looking, and you start looking around the league because obviously I'm very familiar with what Alabama and Auburn's got down the pike in the next couple of years with their non-conference schedule, but I completely forgot that Notre Dame was going to be coming to Fayetteville. So that, yeah, that just makes it an even more daunting task for the Hogs next year.
Yeah. I want to ask you a question about this past year. Same record, same results, but Nick Saban's the head coach. Is Alabama left out of the playoff if he's the head coach?
I think so. And the reason why is because, a few years ago, when they ended up putting TCU over Alabama, and we saw how well that worked out for the college football playoff in the national championship game with TCU and Georgia, I think they would have been left out. But, listen, at the end of the day, all the griping and complaining that I've been doing on our show on Jocks in Birmingham has been about the lack of transparency and the disaster that was this committee. I was on this webinar in October that a lot of other people was on as they were trying to discuss this new realm, this new exciting venture that's the 12-team format. And the number one question we had was, what about transparency? What about strength of schedule? And they were clueless. They were clueless in October. What you got every Tuesday night for Ward Manual was a complete disaster. And so it wasn't so much about, Alabama not getting in, but giving you a long answer to your question, Tommy, it's a situation where I think they were hell-bent. I think just like Joel Klatt said on his podcast last week that this thing was manipulated. There was no way, shape, or form that they were going to screw the ACC out of it. And this was pretty much retribution for Alabama getting in last year by them putting an ACC team in there over an SEC team.
So what, if anything, does Greg Sankey do about this?
Well, I tell you what, the people that I know, they said that Greg Sankey was immediately on the phone Sunday afternoon to his new best friend, Tony Petitti at the Big Ten. And on January the 20th, when they get together, when all the conference commissioners do in Atlanta on the morning of the national championship game, they're already going to start this negotiations. They're already going to start this conversation on the things that need to be done for 2025. Because, guys, listen, when you look at the bracket, whether you got a kid that plays AAU basketball, whether you got a kid that plays travel baseball, would somebody please show me a bracket in the world in which the 12th ranked team gets a first-round bye, beat the 3rd and 4th ranked teams, don't get a bye. Meanwhile, the 11th ranked team, according to your rankings, don't get to play in the national championship tournament, but the 16th ranked team does. It's crazy. It's stupid. They had to cut the deal with the devil with the group of 5 teams. But I guarantee you that you're going to see a situation where you're not going to have the Boise States and the Arizona States of the world get buys moving forward. I think that's going to be the first key that they're going to work on. And then we'll see what happens next year, Tommy. And then from that standpoint, you'll have to wonder, moving forward, do we go to a 14-team or a 16-team tournament? This is going to be a Band-Aid this next season, but there's no doubt there will be changes.
Pat Smith with us here, three-man front, co-host of on WJOX in Birmingham. Pat, why aren't we playing college football this weekend? I know there's Army-Navy, and it's one of the best games of the year, but why not have the college football playoff start this weekend and give the conference championship teams a real bye after their win last weekend?
Yeah, that's a great point, Ty. And, one thing's for sure, and I'm not really sure about the start date in the state of Arkansas for high school football, but we literally start high school football here in the state of Alabama a good 2 weeks before the college football season starts. So why not back up the college game a week or so, like you were just talking about? That way, maybe you could work in an additional bye. Because listen, college football has become NFL light. We had 2 byes or 2 open weeks built in this year. You're going to have 2 open weeks next year. You're talking about adding even more games potentially. So why not give them an extra week, start it a week or 2 earlier? But I agree with you. They should be playing football this weekend. There's no doubt about it. And, moving forward, you got to ask the question about the importance of these conference championship games. We were told that, okay, you go into championship weekend, it's not going to matter. You should not be penalized for losing your conference game. But then when you get these secondary conferences like the ACC and SMU losing their conference game but still get awarded, you have to ask the question, what's the importance, period? I hate to sound like Lane Kiffin, but what is the point of playing these conference games if you pretty much have already secured your spot in the tournament?
Yeah, it was kind of ironic. He said that, and then they got beat by Florida just a few days or a week or so later. Pat, I know things aren't great in Auburn, Alabama, and Tuscaloosa, Alabama right now. Alabama got left out of the playoff. Auburn's not going to a bowl game. But I wonder, your perception, Arkansas, I think, leads the SEC, maybe even college football and transfer portal players. They lost 2 more starters yesterday. Is this just the norm, or is there's a little extra something happening in Fayetteville right now that's standing out to you?
Well, it's interesting because, I was texting with you the other day because, I see this, this narrative out there that the sky is falling and that what is going on at Arkansas and things of that nature. And I don't view it that way. And again, I'm in Birmingham, Alabama, but this is just someone that's covered this conference for a couple of years now. And I can just tell you that this is just college football, period. What's going on in Fayetteville is no different than what's going on in Auburn or in Tuscaloosa. Now, granted, it may be not to the numeric value that you're getting in Fayetteville right now, but this is the new world of college football, period. I mean, it is NFL-wide, as I mentioned before, free agency every single year, and it goes without saying that it's not going anywhere. And this is just the world that we're going to have to live in. But in time before I came on, I heard you talking about, the worst thing about this is that you got a young person that you're able to get them on campus and you want to develop them as an individual and as a football player, as a student athlete, and you're not given that opportunity now because the first opportunity that a second or a third string player, they're not happy with where they are on their depth chart, or their crazy uncle thinks that they can talk to a collective out of state and get them more money, then they're going to look at that and potentially leave. That's the sad part. That's why you're going to see multiple losses every single year in the Southeastern Conference. The Georgias of the Alabama in the world, they're not going to be able to basically have these second and third string 5-stars. They're going to sit there and wait their turn because the Austin Peay's or the UABs of the world, they're going to go and they're going to offer you more money, and you're going to go immediately because you're going to get an opportunity to play, because the first and foremost, you're going to be able to get that money every 2 weeks or every month, and that's going to be well worth it to them as of staying somewhere and trying to work your butt off to be the guy in year 3.
So, Pat, should the portal entry dates be moved? I'm becoming more of a proponent with what head coaches have to deal with following the end of the regular season with staff changes and with now National Signing Day being right on the heels of the final game. Should the portal entry date be moved from early December to, say, I don't know, the first reasonable date in January, the second, the third, right after the first round of the games in the playoffs and most of the bowl games, and that way the portal would only in effect have an effect on 4 teams, the ones left in the semifinals?
Tommy, I think so. I mean, think about what Kenny Dillingham said last week. And by the way, I want to applaud for what he said. He basically said that any kid that got into the transfer portal at Arizona State right now, that they are 100% welcome to continue to work out with the team, show up in practice, go to your position meetings. As long as you were doing what you were supposed to do and you want to continue to pursue outside interest outside of Arizona State, he's fine with that. He's okay with that.
Oh.
But why have that even be an item when your team is now playing in the biggest stage that you've worked so hard to get to? So, Tommy, I agree with what you said. If you're able to move it back, that way you kind of cut out all the potential flirtation. Hey, listen, we know it goes on anyway during this season. We had Caden Proctor in Tuscaloosa last year. He was getting calls from Iowa mid-season, and then he left when Nick Saban left, but then he ended up coming back to Tuscaloosa. It happens everywhere, but if you could just like move the guard post back a little bit, maybe perhaps these coaches will not have to deal with as much as they're having to deal with now. Listen, Hugh Freeze, about 5 games into the season this year, he basically said, look, I'm having to spend so much more time now instead of trying to get this football team back on the right track. I'm having to sit in here and basically recruit my roster every single day. And this was mid-season. So you can only imagine what's going on once they know that this transfer portal window opens up. It's a complete nightmare.
So here's what we do. We have an SEC portal draft. If you want to play in the SEC next year, enter the SEC portal draft. In about January 2nd or 3rd, the 14 head coaches or 16 head coaches rather will meet in Birmingham or Destin or somewhere, and we'll just we'll draft your rosters full.
That is a great idea, Tommy. And listen, and I know this is crazy for me to say this, but I think you guys will probably agree with me. Do you anticipate within a 5-year window where we literally could have a situation where we would have trades in college football?
We basically
seriously, like mid-season, you got your star quarterback just blew his ACL out, and all of a sudden you look in Tuscaloosa, they got Jalen Milroe and Ty Simpson. Ty Simpson's been sitting there, and then all of a sudden you work out a deal with another school to trade his services. I mean, it's crazy to say this right now, but based on what we've experienced over the last 2 years with the changes in college football, that is not out of the realm of possibility.
Well, but Pat, that's against the mission statement. They're student athletes. They are there for their education first, my man. I mean, how would they continue their education? I mean, that doesn't fit with the mission statement, Pat.
Tommy, what was the famous player at Ohio State a couple years said? I didn't go here to go
Cardell
to school.
Jones.
I'm here to play ball.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm here to play ball.
I mean, come on, man. Read the mission statement on the wall.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Oh, man. I mean, meanwhile, you got T.J. Finley, the worst quarterback I ever witnessed, to put on shoulder pads in the Southeastern Conference. Now he's in the transfer portal, leaving Western Kentucky. Yeah, going for his 6th school. So it's just it's a mess. But Tommy, they're there for the school, man.
Yeah, how much fun would it be if we just had the reality of a draft? That would be awesome. Pat, thanks for the insights, and we don't talk to you before Christmas. Merry Christmas.
Hey, Merry Christmas, guys. Season's great, and talk to y'all soon.
Wouldn't that be awesome to have a draft?
Makes it more talked about, and just
not gonna happen. But that would be awesome.
I don't know people, but ratings have never been better in college football right now.
BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA, and college basketball, NHL to UFC and MMA. Head to BetOnline today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here.